Well, Leavers are in a bit of a tizzy at the moment, or shall we say the Brexiteers, and mainly it's pardon me, mainly it's the top tier Brexiteers who are getting rather worried, primarily because, as we have seen in many, many polls now, not only has really leaving the EU now being seen as a bad idea, and that people now regret their vote in increasingly um, bigger numbers. Increasingly, using the old Donald Trump saying that. But we are also seeing, as we've covered recently, we are seeing polling leavers saying, what do you think about Brexit? And even they are coming back and saying, yeah, I'd actually change my mind. If I could go back and vote again, I wouldn't vote the same way. So that is also something that has got them on the panic, but also the increasing feeling. Certainly, we are seeing, and one thing that's coming through, which we have been trying to get through to people since 2016, has been that these Brexiteers have lied. They've lied about the benefits that Brexit was going to bring. They lied about the options and the choices that we would supposedly have that would all be these fantastic Brexit benefits. They're lying right now. Just a few days ago, when we covered Jacob Rees-Mogg's interview he did with William Arnett on Conservative Home on his Mogcast about chemical regulations, saying that they were protectionist, when in reality, when you look at these regulations, these are protecting workers who work with those dangerous chemicals, certainly protecting the health and safety, workers' rights, the environment. Those don't really seem protectionist to me, Jacob, but there you go. So they have a lot to be nervous about. And now, of course, comes the best part, because Brexiteers, as we've said before, love to be not only the betrayers, but the betrayed. So they are now trying desperately, desperately to spin a narrative that this isn't their fault. That, oh, we, campaigned for Brexit for, I don't know, however long these particular Brexiteers like to claim, like 10, 30, whatever years to leave the EU. It would have all gone, swimmingly if only they had listened to us. Of course, you've got many of these Brexiteers who are, of course, in the Tory party, who have been pushing the most hardline stance of Brexit, who have had the opportunity to really, step up and steer Brexit in the direction that they want. But seemingly, not many of them have actually stepped up to those to take those leadership positions, and not many of them actually openly advocate, as we've seen, again mentioned with Jacob Rees-Mogg, being honest about what Brexit has really done to the UK. So today we're going to go over what seems to be that one of the narratives that the Brexiteers are trying to foist, that it's not the Brexiteers' fault. It's not the Brexiteers' fault. It's the Tories' fault. It's the Tories, guys. It's all the Tories. So today we're going to take a trip to Fantasyland, aka the Express, to see what story they are trying to spin. Certainly, of course, to their Brexiteer following, because the Express does have quite the pro-Brexiteer view and following. So before we go diving into this fun story time, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, down below, there is the YouTube thank you button. And of course, the Pony Club as well. Almost forgot. We are, of course, it is Wednesday, so there will be a new video out today for all the Pony Club members and, of course, the Patreon supporters as well. So look out for that dropping at some point today. And of course, as always, like I say, if you would like access to that, like I say, support me on Patreon or on the Pony Club link down below. And like I say, not only do you get access to that video, get access to a whole library of videos that I've made for you guys now from that. So, as always, guys, like I say, on we go with today's story. And it is indeed a fantasy story from the Express because, as we said, they are now trying to shift the blame. It wasn't us, Governor. We didn't tell you all these wonderful benefits, but so this comes from the Express with the title of "Don't Blame Brexit, Blame Tories," urges ex-EMP as third of Leave voters sour on choice. Brexit has not failed. A former MEP has insisted, despite a new opinion poll indicating that a third of Tory voters now believe quitting the bloc has created more problems than it solved. As we always said, the whole thing of this leaving the EU was set up for the Express idea, for these guys to say, look, the EU is the source of all our problems, the source of all our ills. If we only leave the EU, they'll all be solved. It'll be done. It'll be solved. We'll be, it'll be bread and jam for days. But of course, it wasn't. There were always going to be problems leaving the EU, not only just, things like the Northern Ireland Protocol, but we're talking long-term problems with long-term damage, which is what we are seeing. And we warned about this. It was hand waved away as that's just Project Fear. But there you go. So, however, Ben Habib said that the ruling Tory government is rather failing Brexit by failing to take advantage of the multiple benefit it offered, warning that he and others are, quote, working to obliterate the Conservative Party at the next general election. Oh, so again, what are these advantages? And I'm sure Ben Habib would say, oh, well, it's, taking back control of our laws, doing our own regulation or these fantastic trade deals. Well, we've seen these. The regulations that they want to get rid of aren't necessarily regulations they really should be getting rid of or messing with, as we've seen and constantly talked about with the EU revocation bill. We've seen on trade, guess what? We're still doing lots of trade with Europe. That was never going to change because we did Brexit. And you've made it even harder for businesses to do trade with Europe or be active in the closest market. You've made it harder for them because of the red tape that now exists, which you cannot get rid of. Even if you get rid of these regulations, more red tape just goes up, because if you want to sell into the EU or do business in the EU, you have to follow their regulations. Like it or not, they ain't going anywhere. But this was the fantasy land that these Brexiteers like Ben Habib lived in, that if we left, we would just go get rid of all our regulations, and then for some reason, again, like I say, it's some reason. This is always like the question mark point of this. And then point 4 is profit. But of course, they don't know the connection. And there really was no connection between those points. There never, ever was. It was just fantasy, because this is what their ideology has been telling them. If you follow this, you'll profit. But of course, even in their own ideology, doesn't make that leap from, point 2 to point 3 to point 4, which is profit. It doesn't, there's no connection. But there you go. But that's also funny, working to obliterate the Conservative Party. Yeah. Anyway, opinion survey on behalf of Best for Britain campaign group and published in the Sunday Telegraph suggests that some 33% of people who voted Conservative in 2019 now have a negative view of the decision. Almost the same number of Tories, 32%, said that cutting ties had neither created nor solved more problems. 22% of Tories had posted a positive view, while 1/3, 32%, and the remaining 13 didn't know. Mr. Habib, who served along 29 other Brexit Party MEPs, including Nigel Farage in 2019, said, quote, "The Tories have just ruined our economy. our health service and public sector at large. They have also squandered Brexit. These economy, I mean, I, I should have looked this up. I should have looked up what Ben Habib initial thoughts were about certainly Liz Truss's economic plan that crashed the economy. That would have been funny, because it was the Tories that ruined the economy by not investing in the UK, by insisting that Brexit was a better idea, that it's all to do with private services are the only thing that seem to exist. There isn't the public sector, which can and has been shown to do in the past, can fuel economic growth if you're willing to put money into sort of public services. Again, health services entirely on the Tories. Brexit was never going to solve the problems the NHS was having. And of course, we've talked about the service sector many times on this channel, and they haven't squandered any options for Brexit because there were none to begin with. Again, only in the fancy land are there any true Brexit benefits to actually seize. But he continued. When we voted to leave the EU, we voted for the country to leave as one United Kingdom. So again, getting getting the whole idea of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Northern Ireland overwhelmingly voted to remain. That's one thing that, again, Ben Habib will probably ignore, but also this comes back to the question which was asked back in 2016 in the referendum: what do you do about the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland? We've got the Good Friday Agreement, which says, you have to keep no border there. The best way to do that is remaining in the single market customs union, which at that time was the preferred option of leave. To quote Daniel Hannan, only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. When it was put to him that someone from the Remain campaign was saying, look, a vote to leave is a vote to leave the single market, his response was, no, we ain't leaving the single market and customs union. We're going to remain in it because only a fool would leave it. And yet here we are now. And when we warned about this potential problem, this was again battered away as Project Fear. He's continued and said, we do not vote for Northern Ireland to be left behind and for the entire country to remain hitched at the hip to EU laws. Well, except that's not what the campaign was really focused upon. We were going to remain in the single market and customs union, meaning that we were going to remain and retain those EU laws. Do they not even remember what their campaign was at the time? That almost 7 years have passed since the referendum, and 3 years since the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson revealed his, quote, oven-ready deal. Mr. Habib pointed out this. Mr. Habib added, well, that deal was rubbish. Rubbish? Why then did so many Brexiteers say that that deal was fantastic? That this gets Brexit done? All the fanfare that went around that deal, this oven-ready Brexit deal. Anyway, well, that deal was rubbish. He and his multiple successors have failed to fix it. No one can claim Brexit has failed. Actually, we can, because this is Brexit. This is what you presented as Brexit. But he continues to say, we did not get Brexit. We have a lousy new self-harming new treaty with the EU. Don't blame Brexit, blame the Tories. Well, no, this is Brexit because, again, as we said time and time again to these Brexiteers like Ben Habib, Brexit is never enough. They always want more. Always. Always wanting more. And they never, ever get enough. Ever. But, yeah. He said with regards to the Conservative Party's failure, there is one upside though. It is this: the buck stops with our government, and we, the electorate, are right to lead to obliterate the Tories at the next election. I do sort of agree with him on that that quote. I can't disagree with that. Yeah, absolutely. This is a Conservative failure. Brexit was a massive Conservative failure. We need a new sort of politics in the UK, one where politicians deliver on the promises that they make. Among the public as a whole, 57% of the 2,000 people interviewed by Opinion said that Brexit was creating more problems than it was solving. Speaking to the Telegraph, he said it was, quote, deeply disappointing that the obvious Brexit wins haven't been achieved. The obvious Brexit wins. Yet we've been here for how long? And yet, if there were Brexit wins, why isn't he telling them? Why isn't he in this article? It's saying these are the Brexit things. This is what the government should be doing to get these Brexit wins. Whenever we see the exact same thing put forward by Brexiteers, they talk about, oh my God, there's all these Brexit benefits. Then you ask the question of, well, what are these Brexit benefits? And of course, they'll resort to, oh, well, it's, taking back control of our laws. And you're like, well, okay, what laws? And you said, oh, well, these EU regulations. Well, okay, what EU regulations do you want to get rid of? And of course, that is the far as the conversation ever goes. You never see it go further than that. Or if you do, you'll get to see, oh, well, these EU laws are protectionist and they're bad for our economy. But why? Like, what do you mean that they're protectionist? Why are they bad for our economy? And they'll say, oh, they're not good for our economy, they're protectionist. And that's as far as the conversation I'll go. If they're really pushed, that's as far as it will ever go. They only ever really open up about these when they know they're in, shall we say, their own company, in Brexiteer company. You have to go back to what some of like the old pre-Brexit referendum videos on like the UKIP channel to see these talks by Ben Habib, by Daniel Annan, Nigel Farage, talking about all these crazy ideas, these libertarian ideas that they can, quote, save the NHS in this magical way by making people pay for it. And you're like, well, hold on. At that point, it's not the National Health Service then. It becomes a private health service. Or getting rid of workers' rights so that businesses have the freedom to hire and fire who they want. There's all these things. The working time directive was a classic one. Workers are so lazy not working overtime. I remember the good old days where we could force them to work extra hours or we would fire them. This is the kind of stuff they want. This is the kind of regulations that they only ever talk about when they know they're not going to get any pushback. And they are terrified of really talking with journalists, even sometimes their own journalists in publications like the Express, where they're not going to get that much of pushback. They're not doing it. It's bizarre. You can see why people are catching on, but that was the whole point. Brexit was this idea of once we do it, everything becomes gravy now, guys. That's it. We're on the high road. Once we leave, that's it. It'll be, sunshine all the way. But it wasn't. It never was, as we explained and explained and explained all the problems they were going to face. There's going to be this issue. So how are you going to solve that issue? Never solved, never answered, because it was just Project Fear. So, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. And of course, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, please remember to ring the bell as well to get notifications of when we do a new video, when we go live. We're going live tonight as well. We'll be looking at another fantasy land, aka the Durran. That'll be fun. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.